Good evening, everyone. Welcome to AIQRATE webinar specials CXO series. Today we have Dr. Akhil Prasad with us to discuss on the topic Leadership in Disruptive Times, What Really Matters. This session will be moderated by Dhanrajani, CEO and co-founder, AIQRATE Advisory and Consulting. Before the session, as usual, setting some housekeeping rules. Request all to be on mute to ensure uninterrupted listening experience. For Q&A, please leave your questions in the chat window. We will take them up. This webinar is being recorded, and you can check the playback video on our website, www.aiqrate.ai. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Akhil Prasad. Dr. Akhil Prasad is Director and Country Counsel India with BOEING India and is currently a member of the Board of Directors of entities in BOEING Youth. In past, he has held offices as Head of Legal with Fidelity Worldwide Investment, Director India Legal Affairs and Company Secretary of the Walt Disney Company India, as Senior Attorney and Company Secretary of General Motors India. Akhil has over 25 years experience as an in-house counsel and has worked with legal teams spread across different countries. Akhil has worked across various industries in the area of legal, risk and compliance, taxation, regulatory and corporate affairs. He has worked for steel, office automation, white goods, computer hardware, media and entertainment, IT and ITES, private equity, mutual funds, and now aerospace and defense. Akhil has been nominated among the Team Power List 2019 India by Legal 500, GC Power List 2018 India, Team Power List 2017 India by Legal 500, GC Power List 2016 India by Legal 500, 100 Legal Luminaries of India by LexisNexis, and among the finest India in-house counsels by Indian Corporate Counsel Association. Akhil holds a doctorate in law, a doctorate in commerce. Akhil holds professional membership with the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators UK, and Law Society UK, Indian Council of Arbitration India, Fact Panel of Arbitrators and Conciliators India. Dr. Akhil, it's a pleasure to have you in our CXO series webinar specials today. Thanks for making time. I'll now hand over the session to Samir. Samir, over to you.
Thanks, NK, for the introductions. And Akhil, it's a pleasure and honor to have you at AIQRATE webinar specials, the CXO series. And we've got participants who are joining all across from the globe. And I think for the next 40-45 minutes in terms of discussions, we would really take a lot of, I would say, insights in terms of a very topical theme, which I believe is resonating in the minds of each one of us today, which is leadership, because what we are seeing today is unprecedented. But before I start, Akhil, it will be great. And I must say, you've got a very impressive profile and you've worked across very different genres of industries. Would you please spend some minutes just taking us through your profile and how you've kind of taken your professional journey over the years, please?
Yeah, thank you, Samir, and thanks for your organization for inviting me for this very important webinar. So my journey, I'm a first generation lawyer, and nobody in my family has been a lawyer before, except my grandfather was an honorary magistrate during those times at Meerut, and I hail from Meerut. My father was a doctor, mother was a professor. So, my journey started after my BCom. I was not very sure about what I will do in life because those days there were not enough counseling sessions where you were able to understand very clearly what the career path should be. Unfortunately, I never had one. And so, my journey started as a management trainee for a sales and marketing function within SR Group. This was way back in 1990. There, first initial years were with the sales marketing organization. But, sometimes there is always a word which you call destiny. So SR was coming up with a mega public issue of 600 crores, and I was assigned to the company secretary to help him do the secretarial work. I was just a graduate, BCom graduate, and that is where my interest in law started. I went to the company secretary, asked him, sir, you have a great profile, because I used to see him doing those board meetings, important people getting together in a meeting room, all that. So I thought this person definitely has a lot of importance in terms of what he's doing. So that is where he told me, why don't you go and to the Institute of Company Secretaries office, which was at Nariman Point. Our SR office also was at Nariman Point. So I went there, and then I started. Um, and then I realized that, for if you need to have a good career, it is important that education plays a very important role. And that was also because some turning points in my life, which was a mix of doing very mundane things like cleaning office, taking a broom and actually cleaning office, moving material on my back. And I, from Merit, we had a great upbringing. So, the great legacy, and then you think that you have to build your own legacy. It's not that what my parents have done, what my grandparents have done will lead to me, will mean success to me. You have to earn your own success. You have to earn your own career. And that is what came inside me, that my father's name may not be helpful to me in my life. It is what I will do is more important. That is how I started to, I never had time, Samir, to actually take a sabbatical. And then, because I had to be on my own, I lost my father very early. So it was a question of you standing on your own feet. So whatever I did since 89, 90, 91, or my father passed away in 95, especially after 95, was, it was a constant education and constant learning on the ground. So I have been really fortunate, Samir, that I have worked for some very great organizations, starting with Xerox, then Electrolux, then General Motors, then Disney, then Fidelity, and now Boeing. Some very, very great Fortune 500 companies. But, and yes, during this journey since 95 till today, I got my 12 degrees. So, while working, studying, balancing, and I used to also travel up and down for 12 years between Meerut and Delhi during those in a chartered bus. So those 12 years in a chartered bus, I got 4 degrees, including a doctorate. So there was a lot of hard work which went inside what I'm perhaps trying to do today. But I'm really, really very proud of it. Also, I would like to say, Samir, that, although people may think that I worked for great multinationals, um, but there have been a lot of turbulent times with these multinationals also. For example, when I was in Electrolux, a great brand, in white goods, but Electrolux was being acquired by Videocon. So Videocon acquired many brands during those times. So it led to a lot of turbulence, including the many people lost their jobs, including myself. So I lost my job because eventually the brand was to be acquired by Videocon, and they had their own law department. I was not needed. So the writing was on the wall, and then I looked out. I was very worried. But you should leave your worries behind and try to be positive. And studying is what I thought. Educating myself was the right thing. So I kept motivating myself, and then I got General Motors. So General Motors, during those days, had a great success of being on the Fortune 500 list for about more than 34 years. But then the troubles with GM started, eventually leading to its bankruptcy. But I had, before that, I moved to Disney. And in Disney, I had a great opportunity to, understand the Mickey Mouse. the Mickey Mouse, not only because of the Mickey Mouse, but the business that it leads to globally, including the theme parks outside India, licensing of content, movie making. All that was a great learning 3 years. But eventually, we did a merger with UTV, and the entire UTV became Disney India. So there was a lot of churn at the senior level. So I was impacted. Nobody would believe it, but something like a Disney organization, doing a reverse merger, and then some people being impacted. So I was one of them. So again, having seen that story in Electrolux, that your company gets acquired, the brand gets acquired, but you are impacted, your employment gets impacted, and then again the same thing happening to me in Disney. But then again, there was a nervousness inside me, that what do we do? So again, the question, the worries had to go back, the positive mind had to come forward, and then you pull yourself up, and then you say, I want to do something different, I will get something different. So then I thought that again, education is the way that I should bring my positivity forward, which I did, and focus my attention, focus my mind to become positive. And then I found Fidelity. So Fidelity also was, a great organization. I was fortunate to work in a company which had mutual funds, which had private equity, which had ITITS business, which had 9,000 people. So I was involved in a demerger process because Fidelity was in India a combined entity to service both the Boston-based company as well as the London-based company. Both are entirely different, although under the same management. So I was responsible. I was hired by them as the general counsel for both the entities, but eventually we demerged. So again, a lot of uncertainty that how you would deal with such a situation. So again, that positive thoughts had to come forward. And then I joined Boeing. So 25 years has been a fantastic journey for me because I have uh, always worked for very different organizations. Never repeated an industry. And the reason for that has been that whenever you join an industry, the biggest fun is to learn about that particular business. If you join or replicate your career in a same type of organization, I think for me, it was more important that I should learn new things. And so Electrolux to Xerox, which was copiers, to Electrolux, which was white goods, to automobiles, which was General Motors, to Disney, which was Mickey Mouse, and then Fidelity Mutual Funds, to now Boeing Aerospace and Defense. So the journey has been very, very exciting, very turbulent, um, and at times we used to think, what should we do? The world has come to an end because you lost your job. But then there are those moments of when you see that the sky is dark, you are surrounded by darkness. There will always be some flashes in the sky where you have to focus on that. This is where the flash is, what I will convert that flash into light. And if you think that way, you start thinking that way, you will see that light and you will come out of that darkness, is what I have witnessed so far in my career, thankfully.
Fantastic, Akhil. I think we had many leaders coming on this session. This is our 34th session. But must say, I think the whole aspect of what you just alluded and the narrative is very, very, I would say, overwhelming. And I think if I just take some of these key takeaways, I think the first thing what you said about building the career and earning your own success is important. The aspect of you earning 4 degrees, shuttling between Delhi and Meerut is exemplary. And also a very conscious effort on your part to kind of ensure that you don't get bracketized. And working in different genres of industry is also something which is path breaking, because I'm sure this is quite revealing for our participants, that many of us always think that, look, okay, as part of our careers, which has now elongated instead of 25, 30 years because of the larger longevity. I mean, it's increased to 70, I mean, I would say 40, 45 years in terms of our working life. So over there, this propensity, as you rightly said, of looking at different industries, understanding the domain is something. And not to forget the thing what you rightly mentioned, that in the midst, you also face these turbulences, where at some point of time, it was more kind of a, let's say, thing in terms of the things don't working in your way. And I think the biggest takeaway for, I think, the audience in that regard, while we continue our discussion, would be that look, the foundations of anyone's career is not built without the what we say the gyrations or the kind of, let's say, trials and tribulations, because it's never kind of a linear path. It's always goes through. And I think great to have this narrative, Akhil, coming from you. Continuing the discussion, and I think this will set up a very right tone. Can we please have the participants go on mute? It will just give more, I would say, immersive experience for everyone if everyone is on mute, please. We see one of the gentlemen, Nagendra, not muted. Can you please go on mute?
I took care of that for you.
Okay, thanks. Akhil, just to continue the discussion, because I think this is the right context in terms of what we are sitting here, because leadership as such today has a lot of challenges. Few months back, 2020, beginning, everyone wrote a business plan. Oh, we will do this thing. Come March, I think in the next, rather just 3 months, the whole world has become toppled. Now, leaders are going through a crisis today, unprecedented, no doubt today, a big black swan event. But at the same time, there are some challenges which are something where there is no playbook, there is no template. So first of all, we would like to learn from you, what is that you see in this whole COVID situation? How's the whole set of leadership, and you worked with different multiple leaders across in your career, how do you think they are grappling today? What's the set of challenges? So if you can just put the lay of the land, that would be great, Akhil.
Yes, Amir. So what I think is definitely COVID is a different situation. Perhaps the impact is more widespread. But giving you some examples of how it has happened before, like for example, in 2008, when I was with Fidelity, that time we had a financial meltdown, and that financial meltdown was also not localized to India. It was a global impact, which all of us know that it impacted various banks across the globe. It completely had a huge impact on the financial sector. Before that, in 2001, we had this 9/11 situation when the entire world was, shook by a terrorist attack in the US. So things like those have had its own impacts. What I feel is that current situation of COVID definitely is real, but everybody is an expert these days. Everybody is an expert in terms of quickly reacting as to how good or bad a future is going to be. I think for a leader, it is important to, number one, steady the ship. Whenever there is a turbulence, the leader has to steady the ship, and there is no one leader in an organization. We have to encourage that leadership in everyone has to come out. We have to think together as a team. And then we have to think as a team as to what do we do today? What do we do tomorrow? Rather than be worried about some reports which are being generated by experts that it's a doomsday, the world is going to end today. It's not like that. It's never going to be like that. So what we have seen today, that despite lockdown 1, lockdown 2 orders, where people were getting scared, with 500 or 300 or 400 people getting impacted by COVID, today we have 300,000, 350,000 odd cases in India. I would always take it and look at it from a very positive aspect. I would say that out of those 350,000 cases, 180 have been recovered, 160 are active. So what I would like to see, I'm just giving an illustration how a problem should be looked at.
Sure.
There are different ways of looking at it. People may get scared that, if I go out, I may get COVID. Sure, you may get COVID. But what are the chances that you will be impacted by a COVID? 97% of probability is that you will not be affected by COVID. There is a 3% probability you will be impacted by COVID. So that is at least how I see it in our organization. We try and look at a problem in terms of opening up offices, in terms of working with supply chain, in terms of partnering with the government, in terms of partnering with our suppliers, with our employees, see that whether everybody is able to work from home, what is it that they need, give them a positive message. I think that is what leadership is about. The other
But
aspect.
at the same time, Akhil, if I may say, that you rightly said, I think there is a way to look at problems in a very different sphere. So leader is absolutely fine maintaining a kind of a, let's say, calm, composed kind of a, let's say, disposition. But the workforce is anxious, stressed, and very, very concerned. So in that situation, what is that you think should be done by the leaders to say, look, this is how the new aspect should be in terms of ensuring that nothing gets impacting? Any kind of, let's say, takeaways from there, please, Akhil?
I think it is about how a positive communication and a positive message. So I think a leader is not the head of the department. A leader is not the head of the business. A leader is also, a delivery person. Somebody who's delivering, e-commerce sales right up to your home. That person also, if taking a risk and in terms of affecting delivery, is something we should learn from these people. That despite COVID, there are people on the ground who are taking, for example, the doctors, who are treating these problems in government hospitals and private hospitals, the administration, the police people. All these people are doing some admirable work. Are these people or their families not worried about them? Of course, they are worried, but we have to. There, for example, soldiers at when they are doing a war, people are worried that they may not come back, but there is something which motivates them to go beyond the line. I think that courage and positivity is something which a leader should deliver, whether you are leader in your home, whether you are leader in your organization, whether wherever you may be. You have to be, I'm not saying throw caution to the wind, but at least have that positive frame of mind, that ability to be able to generate positivity in a crisis situation. Because if we get panicky, if we say that we are worried, and if we demonstrate that worry to our people, we are only increasing the problem, we are not decreasing it.
Right.
So I may not have an answer to a problem in my management team. So whether I'm candid enough to put that problem across the table so that we have solutions. Everybody will initially start with a fear when you start discussing a problem. But once you are discussing it, we should always see what is the risk, how much is the risk, what is the probability of a failure, what is the probability that people may get impacted due to COVID or any other pandemic. And once we start to realize that, doing a deep dive assessment or an analysis, we will realize that this particular problem that we were getting worried about perhaps was not something which was very real. It was something what we read over as a fake news over WhatsApp was dominant. For example, I always stay away from
Mm-hmm.
reading. I always stay away from reading, messages on WhatsApp. For example, one of the things which I don't do is I never read these messages on a group WhatsApp, on a WhatsApp group.
Using the forward switch happens in multiple groups and keep rotating.
I would rather look at the news channels. I would rather look at the apps which are there on the news channels, some credible news channels. Not that you read anything and everything, but something that you rely on, something where you rely on a credible information. Because in times of crisis, it is very important that you get the right information. And when you get that information, you should make an assessment whether I'm impacted by that information or not. For
Got it.
instance, some people are living in a containment zone. If you're looking at if you're living in a containment zone, does it mean that it's end of your life? Should I be worried? I only have to follow the safety protocols. I have to be, careful. But does that mean that I do not venture out even for getting essential services? I think that would be another extreme altogether. We have to develop that courage and confidence, be conscious about our safety, and then take a very calculated risk. Risk has to be taken. Risk will be taken and should be taken, because without a risk there is no business. In business you have to take calculated risks, even
So I think
in a pandemic. Yeah.
I think you mentioned it very rightly, which if I take some of these insights from your narrative, more about scenario building, risk management, and really estimating the situation and consuming the information to make a context out of it. Otherwise, the information becomes more garbled, more kind of, let's say, distorting in nature. So, on that perspective, Akhil, just continuing the same discussion. Now, one of the facets we have realized in this entire COVID situation, the employees, the workforce are working from homes. No one is coming to the office, and this may continue for some time or maybe a longer time. And in that scenario, the workforce needs to be managed remotely. And the leaders, whichever capacity they are working, have to ensure that the workforce is engaged, the productivity is maintained or even enhanced, they are well taken care of, they are also incentivized well. Now, this scenario or this kind of a model didn't exist earlier, kind of a thing, because there were organizations which had this work from home, but largely it was like, okay, show up at the office, let's kind of a meet up and all. What do you evaluate of this situation? How does leaders think about this, that okay, this is how maybe a new normal of workforce management? So your thoughts over there, please.
So Samir, my personal view is that whenever we are in a crisis situation, or whenever we are in a situation like we are today, people think that it's going to be a new normal. That's what people are saying. But the moment we come back to normalcy, the moment we will see that Delhi has not in the past 10 days reported a single incident of COVID. Bombay has not seen a single incident of COVID. The moment we see these kind of news, things will go back to normal. The old normal, not the new normal.
Right.
So
Right.
I do believe that people may be a little patient in terms of allowing people to work from home, but the fact remains it depends on your organization. For example, if we have organizations which are say in ITES space, fair enough, because you do not have a lot of connectivity with the direct customer. So there you may afford to be at home and work from home, but I definitely believe that there may be some corrections in terms of how much space people actually need, commercial space, how much commercial. For example, some companies like Twitter have said that it's going to work from home for them, so they may try to optimize in terms of reducing costs through letting go the commercial office space, and perhaps devoting more attention on the people welfare and what gets paid, people get paid for. But I believe that once things get back to the normal, I think the old normal will come back. We may perhaps the one positive thing which I have learned out of this COVID is perhaps the standard operating procedures which are being set up by the government and the state government, which I believe is very important to tackle the problem that this country has in terms of 18 out of world's 20 cities being most polluted. So this norm, the new norm, I think should be definitely be used whenever the pollution levels in this country go back to what they were before COVID. We have instances like from Muzaffarnagar, we are looking at, or Saharanpur, we are looking at Himalayas. So those things, will change once the vehicles are back. But those kind of things, I would like to see a lockdown when, there are 18 cities among the top 20 cities, which are from India, being the most polluted. So these kind of things may be, used more effectively going forward. For example, odd and even may not be used, but NCR lockdown may be the new norm going forward when we face such kind of problems. For example, dengue, for example, malaria, for example, any other infections, are of previously the government would think twice or thrice in implementing a lockdown. It has never happened before. But now at least we know that to tackle a situation, lockdown has its own benefits. to contain the epidemic or pollution or disease. So those kind of things may be the new normal. But for organizations to forever, change the style of working by people staying and working from home, I don't think very many organizations permanently make a change like that.
Sure. So if we take a different direction, and something what you said also is true, that I mean, some of these things will be temporal, may not have a long-lasting impact, and once things resume, we also have a tendency of forgetting things quite easily, and which has happened in the past. You've worked, Akhil, with multiple multinationals, foreign entities. Now, over there, I think the whole premise of the leadership has always been okay. One has to really make equations within the matrix structure. There is a lot of kind of emphasis on building C-level kind of a, let's say, relationship with the executives and all. And also one has to really go through this chaos of kind of ensuring things done, getting the things done, because it's never easy in a large corporation. What is your observation and also suggestions for the leaders who are today in that situation where they are going through managing those multiple kind of matrix environment, a lot of stakeholder management? What is the suggestions or observations you have which you would like to provide?
See, Samir, that's a great question. What I have believed and I have witnessed in my career so far, that the way your management team has started to look at a professional has changed. So previously, for example, a law function, which I look after, or a finance function, or a sales and marketing function, they were all treated as pillars of or verticals leading up to the CEO. But today, I think there is a lot of convergence, between functions. The expectation is no longer that you prepare a balance sheet well, or you prepare a financial statement well and a CFO is good, or I do my contract work effectively is what I am supposed to do. I think we have now gone beyond of converging our abilities to become first a problem solver. So I think it is more about a CEO's problem that we are able to solve and who raises the hand first. So if we are in a management meeting, the expectation of a CEO or a managing director or the owner promoter is, how do you get things done? Who is the person who's more effective? Who is the one who's going to take the initiative? For that, it is very important that I do not restrain myself to my own domain. There were times when we used to think that people are specialists and specialists will be more effective. I think for the future, it is very important that you become a generalist than a specialist, because the way disruptions are changing the competition, these people are not the disruptors, do not think the traditional way. They will always think a way which is non-traditional, which can hit your hundreds of years of global practices. They will hit precisely the same foundation which you took to build an organization over hundreds of years. So when you are now going to compete in the future with somebody who is a disruptor, you need people who are able to think fast, quick, laterally, horizontally, vertically, and not say that I cannot tell my managing director I am only a lawyer. I can't advise you more than what is written under the law. My expectation from me in an organization of today and an organization of tomorrow, let's forget the past, will be for a person who is going to solve the problem. And solve the problem does not mean your own domain. So you should be able to collaborate with people to find a solution. So if I don't understand financials, I should be able to work with my CFO and be able to work with my COO or with my HR or with anybody to get a solution for the business, especially during crises like COVID. So I should not be the person. I should not say, well, this is a government order, try and talk to government directly. The moment the order comes, the same day, you should be able to get your business leaders together that this is what has come from the government. This is how we are going to solve this problem.
So Akhil, if I may chime in, many of us, and you touched a very relevant point of being more generalist in nature, despite our own competencies and our own speciality. But many of the times, and I'm sure you've also observed, leaders become closeted, bracketized. This is my area, this is my domain. Let people come in or employees come in for this particular specific area if they need advice, suggestion. Do you think that will stay relevant in the time to come? Because what I'm hearing, this will not be relevant even now and maybe in the time to come, right?
See, absolutely. So, that is I would say an old school thought of thinking that, I am a leader. I will be sitting in my office and people should come to me. You will only be successful if you have an open door policy. So if you are available, for example, if I take my own profile, I'm a counsel of the company of my organization. If I think that I will only be available for my peers and above peers, and I don't care for anybody who is below my peer, perhaps I will not be doing justice to my role. I should be able to solve a problem, which I said, I have to be a problem solver, not only for my managing director or my peers, but for everybody in the organization. I am working in an organization for my stakeholders. And stakeholder is a bigger term than your peers and higher ups. You may get promoted if you do a right linkage, or you may but that's a short-term promotion. You will only get trust and confidence in the organization if you are able to get a buy-in from each and every stakeholder of the organization. And stakeholder of an organization is a 360-degree circle to me. It is not about what is a 180-degree and above, the above two quadrants. It is the lower two quadrants also that makes a perfect circle for an organization where you should be accepted. And the future will only be for those professionals who are able to provide qualitative, timely, and quick solution. Somebody who can...
If I ask, and you said this, quick solutions and the art of problem solving. There are also some of these attributes. Okay, let me just empathy, resilience, adaptive qualities. Now, we can talk about these attributes, which can go into, let's say, multiple of these dimensions. How do you build these qualities and attributes? What is required for a leader to kind of also demonstrate these attributes? Because these are not static kind of, let's say, quality or like a playbook you just read and you kind of, what is your thought process over there? What in those kind of a situations leaders should be doing to say, look, I'm adaptive, I'm resilient, I'm also kind of, let's say, very, very flexible when it comes to, what's your thinking over there, Akhil?
Samir, I would say, you have to walk the talk. I may write volumes of encyclopedias in an organization. I may do best of communication in an organization. But if people don't see me what I'm talking, if people don't see me what I'm talking is what I'm walking, that is where you will lose your trust and confidence. So some people may be very eloquent speakers. They may talk very nicely. But the moment you give them, or a group give that person a particular task, the person will start diverting it to somebody else, rather than taking and providing a solution. And that is what intelligent people will always analyze. So the biggest challenge for any leader in an organization is to demonstrate that you are capable of delivering. So for initial few years in an organization, you have to be very, very patient. You have to be task focused. For example, if you are doing if you have to do a project, try and become a PMO of that project. Even if you are not being designated as a PMO, work with the PMO to perhaps shorten the timeline. So if somebody has told you that this particular thing will be done in 30 days, try and do it in 25 days, try and do it in 20 days, and tell them how it will be done. It's not about talking that, this is a spreadsheet and this is a spreadsheet that this is a, tell them practically how that is going to be done, and then deliver it. So delivering is more important than talking. Perhaps I would not talk, I will deliver. And even if I'm not talking, but I'm delivering, perhaps that delivery gets resonated with people you're working with. You don't have to then talk about it. You have to deliver it, and people will see, well, this is the person who is not even talking. He's a silent worker, but he is somebody who is delivering. And that is how your trust, confidence, and reputation gets built up in an organization as a leader.
So one facet over there, and this is also one of the questions, and good part is that we've started getting a lot of these questions, and I'll blend some of that with the questions I have, Akhil. Today, the workforce has a lot of this new generation, Gen Z, Gen Y, baby boomers, future of workforce. Now, they have a different template. They have a different DNA, how they approach work versus, one generation of leadership which has seen something of talk, but here I think it's about everything quick, fast, very swift. How do you see this balancing together kind of a thing?
No, I must say that I'm extremely impressed, with the work that startups do, the way they do it. For example, we saw this SpaceX, launch a satellite. Look at the minimum time that Elon Musk has taken to complete his dream. We know about Virgin Atlantic, doing a spacecraft, and which he is already targeting 2023, 2024. These are, I would say, people who are not traditional entrepreneurs or OEMs to manufacture a spacecraft, but they had a vision to do it. And when they have a vision to do it, they will not follow a traditional way. What some companies have taken many years to do it. They will do it in a very unconventional manner. And in a unconventional manner, they will give a lot of delegation of authority. They will give a lot of, they will quickly gather feedback, assess that feedback, do a lot of data analytics, and move forward in terms of implementing those things. So I value people who are able to think laterally, people who are willing to go outside the domain, people who are willing to take up challenges, people who don't take shelter. Well, I am a lawyer or I am a finance person. How can I do this or do that? Perhaps that will not work in future. We have to have that smartness. We need to have that quick approach, attitude, but with quality. That is something which I see in today's youngsters, because thanks to perhaps the education system which is changing, thanks to perhaps the international education avenues that people are now embracing, that they are learning new tricks, and they are able to put those new tricks into application in a much better way than what we used to do or what we have done so far. So that is what we have to learn with the youngsters of today, and we have to change ourselves. It is very important for me that even today, having spent 25 years in the industry, if I believe that my next 15 or 20 years, I will be the way I am today, perhaps I'm mistaken. I have to change the way I work. And if I'm able to bring about that change in myself, I will transform the organization I'm working for.
Wonderful. So one of the things you said, Akhil, which I want to take your particular experience for the benefit of our audience is the variety of the industries you have represented over the years. Media and entertainment, white goods, financial services, aviation currently, and long back it was that copier kind of a thing, the hard kind of a goods and all. Now, how do you get into the domain understanding of a business? In your opinion, what should be the few things or aspects what the potential leaders need to understand, capturing the essence of the domain of different industries?
So, Samir, I would say for every professional, and I'm not saying it's only for lawyers, But
Sure.
for every professional, it is very, very important that you understand your business, you understand the culture of your organization, you understand the foundation of your organization. By foundation, I mean uh, how would the professionals who are running it, how would the board of directors of an organization, what is that philosophy of your organization that you should be, working under. So that is something which you have to imbibe and understand. For example, for me, I have worked in some very, very different industries, some very, very different CEOs, some very, very different organizations. But one thing which has been constant is my adaptability.
Hmm.
So it's not that I am what I am and this is how the organization should work because this is what I am. It is the organization where I am and how I adapt to the culture of that organization, how I understand the business of that organization, how do I quickly transform myself to the needs of the management team of my organization is important. So I'm a professional, I am a legal counsel, I'm a general counsel. But if I go in a management meeting and I talk them, well, section so and so, law so and blah, 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 it is like iOS talking to a Android. So
Right.
I have to adapt because remember, for me, working in an organization, I'm the only lawyer. I
Hmm.
have to talk in a language which my business colleagues can very easily understand. And business people generally will not say that, well, it's a legal issue. They will come to you with a problem. And then I have to solve that problem, whether it's a business problem or a legal problem or a financial problem. So the managing director will look into your eye and ask you, what is your view? And
Hmm.
the worst thing and the worst harakari you can do is say that, well, this is not a legal subject. I can't help you.
Hmm.
So that adaptability is extremely important, for which you have to identify. That is how I did. I did do MBA also. I did take a leadership program with Wharton last year also, because I thought that these are some development areas which I need to address to, if I need to go into and become more valuable for my organization in terms of becoming a problem solver. I have to learn those things which people need, where people need help on. It could be a very simple thing of building trust, confidence, leadership. So unless I understand what leadership means, not in theory but in practice, I will not be able to contribute effectively.
Nice. So one of the question, Akhil, which has come in and relevant, given your background, this seems to be very pertinent. It's think about this negotiation, conflict management, persuasion. And I'm sure given the understanding you have from the various situations you've dealt in your professional career, these three attributes are very, very important because I'm sure you've gone through those negotiation phases of, I mean, all these kind of, let's say, different and difficult deals and all, or mergers, acquisition, persuasion, conflict management. What's your suggestion in terms of really saying, look, if we do some of these things, then these three qualities or attributes can be developed or can be chiseled by potential leaders?
See, the most important thing is, a person should listen effectively.
Hmm.
This is not something which I'm telling you, this is everybody knows about it. But I think you have to put that into practice. So whenever, for example, when I was in General Motors and we were setting up a manufacturing facility, this was about 15, 20 years ago when India was still, developing its manufacturing capabilities for the automobiles in India. I think the first and foremost thing was that uh, get these multinationals into India. We already had Maruti by then, but then other companies were doing FDI, getting in technology, but then also developing a supplier chain in India, for which it could have been that I would use my financial muscle
Hmm.
and and pull the partner down rock bottom and squeeze whatever advantage to my benefit as an automobile OEM and treat them as suppliers. But what we have seen that many companies have not done so. They have been very, very, trying to achieve a win-win. by, that suppliers should also make money, the company will automatically make money. So that kind of a mindset is what I think an organization should have, that whatever we are trying to achieve in a, say, if I'm negotiating with somebody, why would somebody on a long-term basis be my partner if the person is not also making money? Why should I only be thinking about my client? I am, as a lawyer, it would be my perfectly in my DNA to get the best bargain for my company. But unless I also appreciate other person's view, other person also has a commercial interest, other person has to be there for a long term. Always have a long term thinking about your partnerships. It is not, I think, a very healthy exercise to only look at the short term. Short term thinking is also there, depending upon whether you are in that business of a speculation or short term exit, like private equity players sometimes do. But some of the big advantages companies, the companies who have really done well, are those who have always looked at a longer horizon. For companies who have always thought about their trade partners also. So my view is litigation is the last resort. It's like a Brahmastra. I spoke at some other webinar the other day that litigation is like a Brahmastra. It will always destroy a relationship. I would rather do a mediation if things are not going right, especially during the current COVID situation. Because we know that I can invoke a force majeure provision. I can extract whatever due to my financial muscle and my organization muscle. But is that the right thing to do? The supplier has to survive. So I have to look at from their lens also if a partnership has to be fruitful and successful on a long-term basis.
Wonderful. So one of the thing, and this is a completely different question, Akhil, an interesting one. You've been instrumental in many of these joint ventures, JV. And many of the times JVs largely, generally haven't gone well with multiple Indian organizations. In your own viewpoint, what is that you feel should be a right construct of a JV? What the Indian company should be doing and what a multinational should be doing, which makes it much more long-lasting in nature?
I think appreciating the other person's point of view. I think, it's like a marriage. It's like a marriage. If a husband thinks that wife should only follow the husband, or wife thinks the husband should only follow the wife, I think the relationship is not going to work. Since you are now married, you are now partners for life, hopefully for life. And that is what, a joint venture should also be, hopefully for life. That if we are there married for life, doing a commercial venture together, I think there has to be a process where whenever there is a tussle, it should be mediated and solved. It should not be that people should keep those negative things fester the relationship. But if there is something which is not working well, it should be talked through, solved, and then people should move forward. It is very important, as I said to the previous question, that you have to think about other person's interest also. It may be a financial interest, it may be a brand promotion interest, it may be a royalty interest, it may be whatever interest. So that interest has to be protected, and both of you should work together to ensure that the objective for which the JV was formed, the charter, the mission statement stays on forever. You may change that mission statement off and on, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. The plans may change in future. But when you have developed a plan, make all efforts to ensure that those plans are implemented, those interests are watched, and whatever things are happening should be immediately addressed.
Wonderful, wonderful. One more thing, and this is though a tangential question, but I still want to take it. Today, there is a lot of this rhetoric against data regulations. Organizations we have seen, without naming, are abusing or doing a lot of these malpractices about data, Akhil, as in terms of really leveraging the consumer or the customer data. Some of these regulations like GDPR, India is also coming out with their own regulations. But do you think there is something else which needs to be done to ensure that these data regulations are more kind of adhered to? Or you believe that the companies which are actually really not using the data in the right way should be kind of held accountable in terms of really saying, look, this is the way. What's your view? I mean, the whole question is more about how the data regulations should be enforced and how companies should be more kind of, let's say, constructive in understanding the privacy of the consumers.
Samir, I would say that there is no one side to it. I think what perhaps needs. So let me give you an example. So, for
Sure.
example, an aviation company like ours, does some kind of a development. For example, we develop, say, a new plane, and that plane perhaps has a utility, say in all 180 or 200 countries. So we may want to develop that plane using different manufacturers in the world. So then we are sharing that data for the purposes of doing something which will transform the aviation or the way the people or cargo moves across the world. So although it is my intellectual property, my data, but then I am sharing that data so that we are able to scale up to a capacity that it could be a game changer for example, this spacecrafts. So
Right.
spacecraft manufacturing may be somebody's IP, but that IP has to be shared in order for that commercial exploitation of that idea. So that data, if you keep it to yourself, it will never be commercially exploited. You may do it to a particular scale, but not to a desired scale. So their data sharing may be important. For example, somebody is to manufacture, say, a drug for COVID. For example, some leading pharma company comes up with a formulation, comes up with a IP but then unless you share that IP with different medicine manufacturers across the world, how would you, um, how would that drug be effective to the mankind, 7 billion population in this world? One manufacturer will not be able to supply to the entire population, the global population. So that particular data will need to be shared, whether it's through IP licensing or what, that's a separate issue. But then developments, innovations will have to be shared to have a impact which is a global impact. Then there are other data, where you need to be confidential. For example, your employee data. So that employee data, highly sensitive data, that is something which you cannot share because that is dependent upon the person providing you that data. Because that is what the law says, that a data subject or a data recipient, how they intersay, they want to protect that data is something which you will not be able to share with anybody else. So it's a very wide subject, and data protection is it's in the right direction, that companies should be sensitive about their data. Companies should be sensitive about their intellectual property. How you want to protect and commercialize it is a separate issue. But then, for example, what happened to British Airways? Data was stolen, customer data was, credit card information was stolen. Those kind of issues will be real issues in the future. That if organizations are not able to protect their data, it will have a deep reputational issue. It will have a deep valuation issue, and organizations in the future will be tested upon how adequately you have handled your data. And if you have not been able to do that, the investors are very smart. They are not going to put money in your business till such time you are able to demonstrate that you have adequate safeguards, that data cannot be stolen. For example, just imagine a situation if Fidelity, something were to happen to the investors' data in Fidelity. The reputation of the company will go down overnight. 401k plans across the globe. So that is the trust and confidence that an investor or a person puts in a company, that I am dealing with this company and my data is protected. And that is how the organizations should start looking at the measures they should adopt to completely safeguard the data that it is dealing with.
Very well said. Akhil, we've hit the time threshold. Didn't realize that the conversation was so engrossing, but must say, I think the coverage, what you had in last 60 minutes, what you provided to the global participants in the last 60 minutes is amazing, because not only, I would say, a very kind of a, let's say, great background, what you talked about in terms of how you came up the ranks and went through that whole leadership curve, to the aspects about what leadership credentials, quality attributes are all about, and coupled with how they should believe in terms of scenario building, the whole aspect about looking at building insights and making some kind of a judgments where these are not like one-off moment, these are consistent, and also ensuring that they're also meandering and working in a complex matrix environment, going through that understanding of being a journalist then a specialist, which was a great and a very, very, I would say, succinct point what you made. And having said that, I would say that you made this session very comprehensive, holistic, and very insightful, Akhil. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate, and it was our honor and privilege to have you at the session. And thank you all the participants.
Thank you, Samir. It was a wonderful interaction.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.